Anna, an Asian American woman who was adopted at a young age, has always carried a sense of emptiness within her. Despite being raised in a warm, loving family that showered her with care and support, there was always something missing, a piece of her past that she couldn't quite grasp. Her adoptive parents were kind, attentive, and she loved them dearly. But as she grew older, Anna found herself haunted by questions that lingered in her mind. Who were her birth parents? Why did they give her up? And most importantly, what was her true identity? The curiosity turned into an overwhelming desire to understand herself on a deeper level. She realized that while her adoptive family had given her everything, there was still an unspoken connection with her biological roots that she couldn't ignore. The search wasn't just about finding her birth parents. It was about discovering her own story, piecing together fragments of a life that had been left behind. For Anna, it became more than just a quest for answers. It was a journey of self-acceptance and emotional healing. With a heart full of uncertainty and hope, Anna began the difficult and often frustrating process of tracing her biological family. She combed through adoption papers, reached out to agencies, and sought out every lead she could find, only to face obstacles at every turn. At times, she felt a deep sense of loneliness, as though the more she uncovered, the further away the answers seemed. But despite the setbacks, Anna never gave up. She clung to the hope that one day she would be able to piece together the parts of herself that had been missing for so long. As her search progressed, she began to question what she would do if she actually found them. Would her biological family accept her, or would they resent her for being raised by someone else? Could she truly belong to both worlds? These questions filled her with both excitement and fear, and with every new discovery, she found herself walking a fine line between hope and doubt. After years of living with a quiet longing, Anna finally reached a point where the questions surrounding her origins became impossible to ignore. The feeling of incompleteness had grown stronger with time, and the weight of the unanswered questions had begun to affect her every day. It wasn't just a matter of curiosity anymore. It had become a need, an essential part of her own personal growth. She had reached the point where she could no longer live with the uncertainty, where the silence around her past felt like a constant barrier to understanding who she truly was. One evening, as she sat quietly in her room, looking through old photos of her childhood, Anna made the decision. She would take the leap and begin her search for her biological parents. The thought of stepping into unknown territory was both thrilling and terrifying. She wasn't sure what she would find, or if she would find anything at all, but she knew she had to try. Her adoptive family, who had always been supportive of her quest for answers, encouraged her to pursue her journey. Yet, they also expressed their concerns, knowing how painful the process could be. But Anna, despite the fear that gnawed at her, felt a deep sense of conviction. She had spent her life being grateful for the family that had raised her, but now she needed to explore the part of herself that had always been missing. The first step was to contact the adoption agency, where she had been placed as a child. The process wasn't easy. There were forms to fill out, protocols to follow, and a great deal of red tape. Every day, Anna waited anxiously for any hint of information, wondering if she would ever hear back. It felt as though she were walking in circles, caught in a maze of paperwork and bureaucracy, but with each small piece of progress, her determination only grew. This journey was not just about finding her parents. It was about finding the truth and giving herself the chance to understand the person she had become. But the path was never straightforward. She faced numerous dead ends, unanswered questions, and moments of doubt where she wondered if she was chasing an impossible dream. Sometimes it felt as though the closer she got to the truth, the more elusive it became. But Anna's resolve remained unshaken. Every setback only strengthened her belief that this journey was worth every moment of uncertainty, and she knew that no matter what she discovered along the way, she would have to face it head-on. As Anna continued her search, the journey became increasingly challenging yet rewarding. She was now entrenched in the process, sifting through adoption papers, reaching out to various organizations, and piecing together the fragments of her past. Each day, she combed through details, hoping for a breakthrough, yet it often felt like she was swimming against a current. There were moments when she felt defeated, when the weight of her unanswered questions threatened to overwhelm her. But Anna pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. One day, after months of searching, Anna received a call from the adoption agency with some crucial information. It was a turning point. Her biological mother had been located, and the agency had tracked down her contact details. Anna's heart raced with a mixture of excitement and fear. The idea of finally speaking to the woman who had brought her into the world was both thrilling and terrifying. She had no idea what to expect. Would her mother want to meet her? What would their conversation be like? These questions swirled in her mind, but she couldn't deny the rush of anticipation that filled her as she prepared to take the next step. When Anna finally spoke with her biological mother, the conversation was raw and emotional. Her mother explained the circumstances surrounding Anna's adoption, how difficult it had been for her to make the decision, how she had been forced to give up her child due to financial hardship and personal struggles. Anna listened intently, her heart breaking for the woman who had sacrificed so much. She realized that her biological mother had never stopped thinking about her, even though they had been apart for so long. The emotional weight of the moment was almost too much to bear, but it was also a profound revelation. Her biological family had always loved her, even from a distance. The discovery of her birth mother led Anna to learn more about her biological father and the rest of her extended family. As she uncovered more pieces of her history, she found herself grappling with the complexity of her emotions. She had always assumed that her biological family would be a perfect fit, a missing piece that would make everything in her life complete. However, the truth was more nuanced than she had imagined. Her birth parents had both faced immense struggles, and they were not the perfect, idealized figures she had envisioned. They were human, flawed, and shaped by the challenges they had endured. Yet, in every conversation, in every revelation, Anna began to understand something much deeper. Family wasn't just about shared bloodlines. It was about the connections, the love, and the sacrifices made along the way. Her birth mother, despite the separation, had always carried the burden of love and loss. And as Anna learned more about her roots, she began to appreciate the complexities of both her adoptive and biological families, realizing that they each held a special place in her heart. After weeks of phone calls, emails, and letters, Anna finally arranged a meeting with her biological mother. The day of their encounter was filled with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. She wasn't sure what to expect, but she knew this would be a defining moment in her life. As she approached the address she had been given, her heart raced, and she felt a whirlwind of emotions: hope, fear, excitement, and uncertainty. She wondered if she would recognize her birth mother, or if it would feel like meeting a stranger. What if they didn't have anything in common, or worse, if the connection she had longed for didn't exist? When she arrived, her biological mother greeted her with open arms, tears streaming down her face. In that moment, Anna realized that despite the years of separation, there was an undeniable bond between them. Her mother was not the idealized figure she had imagined as a child, but she was a woman filled with warmth, love, and regret. Anna noticed the same eyes, the same smile, familiar yet new, and as they embraced, the years apart seemed to melt away. Her mother spoke softly, explaining how difficult it had been to let go of her, and how, despite the distance, she had always thought of Anna. Anna was overwhelmed by the raw emotion in the room. For the first time, she felt like she was truly seeing a part of herself reflected in another person. Her mother's voice trembled as she shared stories from the past: how Anna's birth had changed her life in ways she hadn't expected, how she had never stopped wondering about her, even as she moved forward with her own life. Despite everything, there was a deep sense of love and longing that had never faded. As they talked, Anna began to meet other members of her biological family: her half-siblings, cousins, and extended family members. Each encounter brought more revelations, more shared traits, and more emotional discoveries. Some were more open than others, but with each meeting, Anna began to piece together the story of her biological family. It was nothing like what she had imagined. There were no fairy tale reunions, no perfect, harmonious family gathering. Instead, there were imperfections, awkward silences, and unfinished conversations. But through it all, Anna realized that this was her real family, the people who had shaped her history, even if they hadn't been there to raise her. One of the most poignant moments came when Anna sat down with her birth father, who had been a part of her life only through stories and distant memories. Their conversation was hesitant at first, but over time, it began to flow more easily. He, too, had thought of her every day, and although he hadn't been able to be part of her life, he had always carried her in his heart. Anna saw the same vulnerability in his eyes that she had seen in her mother's, and it gave her a sense of peace, knowing that the love they had for her had always existed, even in silence. The meeting with her biological family, though imperfect, was a powerful emotional experience for Anna. She began to see that family wasn't about perfection or having all the answers. It was about the connections that were formed, the love that was shared, and the mutual understanding that could grow over time. She had been searching for answers, but what she found was a deeper understanding of herself and a new appreciation for the people who had shaped her, both the family who raised her and the one who had given her life. As Anna continued to meet more of her biological family, she began to feel a complex mix of emotions: gratitude, confusion, and a growing sense of inner conflict. While she had hoped that meeting her birth parents and relatives would fill the gaps in her identity, the reality was far more complicated. The love and warmth that she had longed for were present, but so were the unresolved issues. Her biological parents, despite their love for her, were still living with the weight of the decisions they had made years ago. Anna could see the pain in their eyes as they shared their stories, each of them carrying a burden of regret and guilt for the past. On the other hand, her adoptive family, who had raised her with unwavering love and care, began to feel distant. Anna had always been incredibly close to them, but now, as she learned more about her biological family, she found herself torn between two worlds. She loved her adoptive parents deeply, but she couldn't deny the connection she was beginning to feel with her birth family, and that led to an overwhelming sense of guilt. She wondered if they would feel betrayed, if they would think she was somehow choosing her biological family over them. The thought of hurting them, the people who had been there for her through every milestone, who had loved her as their own, was unbearable. Anna found herself retreating into silence, caught between her adoptive family and her biological family, unable to reconcile her feelings for both. There were moments when she felt like she was betraying one side while trying to be true to the other. Her inner turmoil only grew as she spent more time with her birth family, yet still found herself missing the familiar love and security of her adoptive home. She wanted to bridge the gap between both sides, but the more she tried, the more she felt like she was losing herself in the process. It wasn't until one evening, after a particularly emotional conversation with her adoptive mother, that Anna began to find clarity. Her adoptive mother, understanding the turmoil Anna was going through, gently reminded her that love wasn't about dividing yourself into pieces. It was about embracing all the parts of you, including both families. "You don't have to choose between us," her mother said softly. "We're not going anywhere. We love you for who you are, not just for where you came from." Those words were a turning point for Anna. She realized that her love for both her adoptive and biological families didn't diminish one or the other. It only expanded her heart. She didn't have to choose. She could be grateful for the life she had with her adoptive family, and also cherish the new connections she was forming with her biological family. It wasn't about replacing one with the other, but about accepting the complexity of her own journey. With this newfound understanding, Anna began to approach her relationships with both families differently. She embraced the love and the lessons that both sides had to offer, realizing that each family, in its own way, had shaped who she was today. The conflict that had once felt insurmountable began to fade, replaced by a sense of peace. Anna understood that family, in all its forms, was about more than just blood. It was about the connections, the sacrifices, and the shared experiences that bind people together. As Anna navigated the delicate balance between her two families, she began to truly understand the depth of love and sacrifice that had shaped both sides of her life. The more time she spent with her biological family, the more she saw how much her birth parents had given up for her. Her mother, in particular, had made an incredibly difficult decision to let her go when Anna was just a baby, knowing that her circumstances were not ideal for raising a child. Despite the pain it caused her, She had sacrificed her own desires and dreams for the sake of Anna's future, hoping that she would have a better life with a family who could provide her with more stability. Anna saw the tears in her eyes every time her mother spoke about the moment they parted, and the guilt she carried all these years. Yet, in every conversation, there was also a deep, unspoken love, a love that had never waned despite the years of separation. Anna's birth father, too, had his own sacrifices to share. He had been young and overwhelmed by the responsibilities of parenthood when Anna was born, and while he deeply regretted not being able to be part of her life, he had always kept her in his heart. It wasn't just the sacrifice of not raising her, but the quiet longing he had carried with him every day, wishing for the chance to know her. As Anna learned more about his past, she realized how much his decision had been shaped by the difficult circumstances he faced at the time. He had made sacrifices that were hard to understand as a child, but now, as an adult, Anna saw the weight of those choices and the love behind them. Yet, it was her adoptive family that truly showed Anna the depth of unconditional love and sacrifice. Her parents had opened their hearts to her, knowing she wasn't their biological child, and had raised her with the same care and devotion as their own. They had never seen her as anything less than their daughter. Anna saw now how much they had given up in their own lives to provide her with opportunities and experiences, how they had sacrificed their time, resources, and sometimes their own desires to ensure she had everything she needed. Her adoptive mother had been there through every heartbreak, every achievement, and every challenge, offering a steady hand when Anna needed it most. And her adoptive father, although more reserved in expressing his emotions, had shown his love through countless small acts of care and protection, always putting Anna's well-being first. In moments of reflection, Anna began to understand that love wasn't a simple thing. It wasn't about choosing one family over the other. It was about recognizing the different ways that love manifested in her life. Her biological parents had sacrificed so much to give her a future, and although they hadn't been there to raise her, their love had never faded. On the other hand, her adoptive parents had given her a sense of belonging, a sense of home, and a foundation for who she had become. Both families had shaped her into the person she was today, each in their own unique and valuable way. Anna no longer saw her journey as one of choosing between two families. Instead, it was about embracing the love and sacrifice from both sides, understanding that her story was the result of a complex web of connections. She was the product of both families' love and sacrifices, love that transcended bloodlines and time. With this newfound understanding, Anna felt her heart open up in ways she had never expected. She could appreciate the gift of both families without guilt or conflict, seeing now that love in all its forms was what truly mattered. As Anna's heart slowly healed from the internal conflict that had once torn her apart, she found herself at a point of reconciliation. The weight of her emotions had lightened, and the walls she had built between her two families began to dissolve. It wasn't a single conversation or a dramatic event that made this possible, but rather the gradual realization that love, in its many forms, didn't require perfect resolution. It was the simple understanding that her journey was not about making a choice, but about accepting all the people who had shaped her, and letting them occupy different, yet equally important, spaces in her heart. Her relationship with her adoptive parents grew even deeper. They had always been supportive, but now there was an unspoken understanding between them. Her adoptive mother smiled warmly when Anna mentioned her biological family, proud of the woman her daughter was becoming. Her adoptive father, although quiet in his expressions, offered his silent support, knowing that Anna had found peace in her heart. It was no longer about hiding her search or feeling like she was betraying them. They recognized that her biological family, though new and unfamiliar, didn't take away from the love they had for her. It simply added to the richness of her life. Meanwhile, her biological family was still a work in progress. Though Anna had established a bond with her birth mother and father, there were still many layers of their past that needed to be uncovered. The road ahead was not without its challenges. There were unanswered questions, unspoken emotions, and histories that needed time to heal. But Anna had learned that not all wounds could be healed in an instant, and sometimes the most important thing was simply being present, showing up, and accepting the imperfections. The process of reconciling with her biological family was far from complete, but it had moved from a place of tension and confusion to one of quiet understanding. Every visit, every phone call, brought with it small moments of connection, shared laughter, tender gestures, and conversations that felt more natural with each passing day. Though they were still navigating the complexities of their relationship, Anna realized that it was okay to take things one step at a time, without rushing to force a perfect family dynamic. As for Anna herself, she had changed. The journey had transformed her, teaching her not only about the importance of family, but also about the complexities of identity and love. She no longer felt like a puzzle piece that didn't fit. Instead, she saw herself as a person shaped by multiple forces, each family, each experience, contributing to the person she had become. There was no clear-cut ending to her story, no perfect resolution, but she had come to accept that life wasn't about having everything neatly tied up. It was about embracing the messiness, the uncertainties, and finding peace with the journey itself. The final chapter of Anna's journey was not an ending, but an open door. She didn't know what the future would hold, or how her relationships with her biological family would evolve, but she was no longer afraid. She was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that love, in all its forms, would continue to guide her. Her story was still unfolding, and she was finally at peace with that.